Well, Jordan, as you mentioned, for most of the week, all we've known is that some Good Samaritan risked his life jumping off of the Route 90 bridge into the waters below to save the life of a 2-year-old. Well, today we finally got to meet our hero. Take a look at your screen. Part of the reason why I want you to take a look at this. The Wicomico River has a lot of dirt, a lot of sediment in there. And as you can see, that creates for visibility issues, which makes it real tough when you're trying to find somebody who's gone under. A lot of them are holding signs, and I'm going to get to those signs in just one moment, but I want to show you this right here. Police have set up a barrier here at the traffic circle in Georgetown. That way protesters can stay safe from traffic. I want to bring you over here. Let me show you this. Deadstock SPY. They brought out ice water because it's a hot day. They want these protesters to stay hydrated. There's also been bottled water from places like Rody Joe's, so the community is here supporting these protesters. On tables for many restaurants in Maryland, this is what life looks like during the coronavirus pandemic. Lawmakers were seeing their friends, sharing stories, sharing laughs, just catching up with one another. There was an excitement in the air here today, and even though there was a lot of smiles, make no mistake, lawmakers know there are a lot of serious topics for them to tackle in 2020. But these charging documents only begin to tell the story. 47 ABC spoke to the next door neighbors who shed more light on what allegedly happened in the house behind me. First being that they're right next to the water and there was no fire hydrant for them to hook up to. The second being that there was a propane tank right next to this main house. It started venting by the time they arrived. And the third thing, that there were cars in the driveway. And we start tonight with our top story. Maryland Governor Larry Hogan announcing all public schools will be closed for 2 weeks starting Monday. In March of 2020, almost everyone thought that schools shutting down would be a temporary thing and that students would be back in school like normal in no time. Roughly half a year later, normal is nothing close to where we are. For most of Delmarva, the start of school this year looked eerily similar to the way it did at the end of the last school year, with rooms and homes turned into classrooms and students learning online. And as many of them plainly put it, it's not easy, but they're making the best out of it.
It's okay. I feel like it's just really different. It's not what I'm used to. I prefer going to normal school though, because I can see people and talk to people. It's more interactive.
For Julia Gore, who's in 8th grade in Wicomico County Public Schools, and her brother Dylan Gore, who's in 11th, their days start after 10. Every day during the week except for Wednesday has synchronous learning, meaning it's live on their screen and they can participate in real time.
My first class is at 10:15, and my first class is physics, so he usually does some problems with us on like a notepad, and we take notes and we do some practice problems on our own maybe. And then other classes like history or English, they usually have like PowerPoints, and we take notes and stuff like that.
Since both are older, they've adjusted to online learning. For some younger students, the transition has not been as easy. So Noah, what grade are you in?
4th.
And so you've been doing distance learning for 4th grade. How is that?
It's kind of stressful.
Noah Habermeyer is also in Wicomico County Public Schools along with his 3 sisters. One is in pre-K, one is in 6th grade, and the oldest is in 9th grade. All of them learn within feet of each other, with mom balancing a part-time job at home while also playing teacher assistant to her children.
I'm doing IT and math and English and history and cafeteria service. Yeah, it's very stressful.
For the Habermeyers, they rely on hotspots provided by the county schools to get high-speed internet, which means each day is an adventure.
We often think that each other are talking to each other, and so we're all in each other's space and classes. And
Has it been hard for them?
yes, yes. One of them was crying today because it's really difficult.
For daughter Claire, the hardest part has been getting questions answered during her English learning arts class.
Sometimes they can't hear you whenever you're, like when you raise your hand, sometimes they just ignore it and it's just hard.
On top of the learning struggles, though, there's an emotional component too. The students learning online miss their friends. Do you miss that at all?
Oh yeah, I miss it a lot. I miss like seeing my friends. I mean, I guess you kind of see them on the Zoom calls, but you can't really like socialize with them because they want you to, most of the time they want you to stay on mute.
According to psychologist Dr. Kathy Seifert, that lack of social interaction that students normally get at school can actually be harmful for the development of teenagers.
You're into the adolescent arena where that interaction, developmentally, the interaction with peers is really, really important.
That's why she says it's important for them to get interaction elsewhere, whether it be using social media or seeing their friends outside of school. For Angie Allange, her children are doing that now, but she fears for how long it will last.
As well as they are adjusting so far to virtual, many kids are not good with that. And really, I feel like their future is going to be impacted by this in a very huge way.
However, for younger children, Dr. Seifert says the lasting impacts could come from those who are in homes where they're having problems with parental figures and not getting the positive adult interaction and reinforcement they would normally get at school.
They're not learning at home the things they need to learn. And if they sit in their room and take care of their schoolwork by themselves, still not getting that adult guidance and interaction, which really kids need until adolescence.
The harsh reality, according to Dr. Seifert, is that some children will fall through the cracks, either because of online access, their ability to learn online, or because a parent or guardian just isn't around. The good news is, though, that most parents and students are trying, and as it would seem, making the best out of a situation that none of us want to be in.
I just think that it's just stressful, and it's good that we're staying home and not getting sick, but it's also bad that I just don't like doing online school all the time.
Today was easier than last week, so it takes some time getting used to and working out the kinks.
Of 2010, two horrific murders would happen in the apartment building right beside me. It was here that police say that Arlene Bird and Antonio Smith were brutally tortured for almost 2 hours before eventually being killed. Now, despite the best efforts of investigators, leads dried up and the case went cold. That is, until now. For over 10 years, the double homicide of Arlene Bird and Antonio Smith has remained something of an urban legend. Rumors have circulated, but as far as who killed the two people known as Twin and Butter, that remains a mystery.
This was extremely significant.
Why?
Just because you have one of the victims, Arlene Bird, very well thought of as far as within the community. Same thing with Antonio Smith. He went by Butter. One of his other nicknames was he was the unofficial mayor of Salisbury.
Arlene was loved in the community. She did people's hair, had friends all over. She was someone her twin sister Darlene and her older sister Keisha say everyone just wanted to be around.
She was energetic, she was outspoken, she was outgoing, she was like the life of the party. So we didn't, unless she was around, it was like, no, we're not having fun.
Antonio, meanwhile, was someone whose reputation preceded him. Even if you didn't know him personally, most people knew of him, and many thought of him fondly.
He was well known, he was a nice guy. I mean, every time I was around him, he was the most humblest, nicest guy you'd ever want to meet. And the irony in that is I've never met him.
But in the early morning hours of July 18th, 2010, both would be taken from this world far too soon. Arlene, just 31, Antonio, only 26. According to the autopsy report, both Arlene and Antonio would die from asphyxiation, stab wounds, and blunt force trauma. But that only begins to tell the nature of their gruesome deaths.
Based off of what we saw, as far as the reports and evidence and the autopsy reports, we're confident in saying that they were tortured inside that apartment.
Sergeant Lance Lloyd with Maryland State Police reopened the case in November of this year. And it's his belief, along with other investigators, that more than one person is responsible for carrying out these heinous crimes. They believe Antonio was the target of a carefully planned attack that Arlene found herself in the middle of.
They had time. This wasn't something typical or seemed as if it was rushed.
Now, as far as investigators know, the night of July 17th, Arlene and Antonio would attend a party at Brew River. Around 3 a.m., Antonio would drive home to his apartment on the 3rd floor in the 510 building at Parkside Apartments in Salisbury. Arlene would follow. But it's Sergeant Lloyd's belief that their killers were waiting there for them. And before the two ever made it inside of Antonio's home, both would be attacked, maybe even held at gunpoint, before being forced into the apartment, where for the next 2 hours their assailants would beat, stab, and choke the life out of their 2 victims, leaving behind a trail of blood outside the apartment, clearly visible to anyone that would have walked by. But despite the noises, the blood, all the commotion, no one called police.
When I woke up that morning, I could instantly tell something's not right.
You had an intuition there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Darlene would call her sister that morning several times. As each call went unanswered, her uneasiness grew, until she took matters into her own hands, driving around Salisbury looking for her sister, eventually finding out from friends that Antonio lived at Parkside.
I saw her vehicle, I saw his 2 vehicles out there, so I said, okay, maybe her phone's just dead. So I left. This was about maybe 12 o'clock. I left, but I still had this uneasy feeling all day.
Less than 2 hours would go by before she would return. This time, Darlene would find Antonio's actual apartment, a boy playing outside, pointing it out to her. Within minutes of getting to his door, though, that's when Darlene says the nightmare began.
When I looked down, I could see the bloody footsteps coming out of the apartment onto the landing. You open the door, there's blood smeared on the back of the door. You open the door, and there's a huge puddle of blood trickling down, like on the landing, huge puddle, and then trickling all the way down the stairs.
Darlene would call Salisbury police, who would initially begin the investigation. But it's Sergeant Lloyd's belief that now there may be new hope, thanks to new technology that's allowing them to re-examine the scene.
It's like DNA tests and lab tests that we can do to possibly uncover suspects, other persons of interest, different leads that we can go forward with there.
Just in the past few days, they've learned the blood outside the apartment belongs solely to Arlene and Antonio. They're also retesting things like this pair of sunglasses that belong to Antonio and his cell phone as well. But despite the new leads, it's still Sergeant Lloyd's belief, as well as the belief of Arlene's sisters, that at least someone knows something about what happened here in Building 510.
Those apartments, I've lived there.
The walls
for
are
7 years. The walls are paper
thin.
You can hear everything. You can hear what happens in the hallway sitting in your living room. You can hear what happens in the next person's bedroom, in your bedroom. You know, so it's like, I just don't understand like how no one, claims to have heard nothing.
That's why her sisters and investigators are asking anyone who may have any information, no matter how insignificant they may think it is, to come forward to help put an end to this suffering. So what do you want to let people know in terms of people who may be sitting on some piece of information and are still refusing to come forward? What do you want to tell them?
If you know something, say something. We're tired of hurting. It's been 10 years. It doesn't get easier. But just a little piece of closure.
That's all I want. I don't care if you like trans people. I just want you to coexist with me.
Acceptance is something that most people crave. And for Harper Howard, a 19-year-old trans man living in Salisbury, that's no different.
I feel like I'm always having to explain myself to people. That's something I feel like I have to explain. I'm trans, you know that. Don't get mad, don't act weird, I'm trans.
For Harper, the battle for acceptance first started at home with his parents. He says at first he thought he was lesbian, but after finding more about himself, he came out as trans at age 13, which for his parents was too much to handle.
I was on Instagram and I went by Harper and everything, and they told me I had to stop pretending to be a boy on social media.
They told you that?
Yeah.
And what are you feeling when they tell you this, your parents?
It was hard. It was like one of the hardest things because, you're always taught that your parents are supposed to love you no matter what. And I mean, like, when my dad and my stepmom, which are the two people that have always, been there for me, were no, that, hit hard. They, scared me. Because I was like, if this is how my parents are going to react, who else is going to, if they can't love me now, how can I expect someone else to love me?
But it wasn't just at home that Harper fought the battle for acceptance for who he really is. At school, things weren't much better.
I was telling people, I'm a boy, and then people are like, no, you're a girl. So it's really hard when you feel something on the inside, but your outwards, the way I present myself wasn't masculine enough for society to accept.
To him, he says he felt like he was losing the battle on both fronts. And that's when things took a turn for the worst.
I was right before my 10th grade year. I did not want to go back to Bennett. I was scared. I was like, I can't go back another year to be called by my birth name and continue in this house where no one accepts me. So I tried to kill myself.
For Harper, that was rock bottom. Thankfully, though, his story didn't end there.
I went and I got myself therapy. I went to the school social worker at Bennett and she helped me find therapy. And they really, really helped me. Like she helped me come out at school. She emailed all my teachers for me and that was like an improvement that helped a lot.
It would be that help that would eventually be the reason why Harper and his parents could mend their broken relationship 3 years after he came out.
My therapist at the time told him basically, you are either going to have to accept the fact you have a trans child or you're going to have a dead child. And that's what really kind of like sunk into my dad.
From there, things improved, step by step. Harper saying his father had to do his own research to understand, until finally one day in therapy.
I think he was talking to my therapist at the time and like said something to her and I was like, he just called me a boy and I didn't even, that was like, yeah.
But while things were improving on the home front out in public, Harper was still fighting the battle for acceptance, especially against those who believed they had the power to change him. Sadly, one night at a high school party, someone actually tried to do that after overhearing Harper being called a guy.
One of the dudes got like really, really mad about it and just like later on the night, like he like tried to like change me back into a girl and like make me know as a girl. And I was... People are weird, like disgusting. Like they feel like they're right and they try to install that in your mind.
Make you know you're a girl. Did he try to get sexual with you?
He did, like that's the whole point. Like, and that was like a very, very traumatic experience for me. And now that's like constantly in my mind. Like, how is someone going to react? Are they going to react like that?
So he tried to rape you?
He did. Like that's what happened.
That moment, another low point in Harper's battle for acceptance.
I got like really, really depressed afterwards, but like things like that, it still doesn't change who I am. I'm still trans, I'm still Harper, and I'm always gonna be Harper, and nobody's ever gonna change that. And now I just have to be able to advocate for other people and hope that doesn't happen for them, or be there for them if it does happen.
Now, a few years removed from it, Harper is tackling a new journey, this time changing his body through transitioning.
Just a couple days short of being 9 months on TV.
The journey started in January of this year, with Harper taking injections and documenting the changes along the way.
It's very euphoric. I mean, there's still farther I want to go, but it's very euphoric to be able to look back at the videos I see and I'm like, I did this. I was finally able to do this.
And although the battles for acceptance are still ones he fights with some of his family, with society, and sometimes with himself, he says he hopes his story is one that others can draw from. So maybe their battles may just be a little bit easier.
And I want someone like from this area to be able to see like, you know, this person lives in the same city as me and I can do that too. Like, you know, give them a little bit of hope.